So what's going on, guys? DIY Dan again, and today I'm going to be showing you a water damage repair on this fifth wheel. This is a 38-foot Weekend Warrior we bought. I got a smoking deal on it because of this water damage it had in this corner. It looked like it had a roof leak at one point right here and ruined a couple studs and one of the bottom cross members here, causing this whole corner to sag. So let's get to it. So it looks like they had repaired the roof to seal the water leak, and that repair looks pretty good. However, they did not properly reinforce the side paneling that had been ruined, and therefore the damage and the sagging happened again. So what I did is I got a stand here, put a jack on it, I lifted this corner up, let it sit overnight. Now we're going to brace it in and anchor it. So here's a quick view of the cabinet damage before we did the repair. So I had taken most of the cabinetry out before I decided to do the video on this, guys. This is actually the finished product, but most of this cabinetry is all put together with staples and brad nails. So a couple pry bars, a flathead screwdriver, you should be able to get most of the stuff taken apart without damaging it too bad, where you can reuse it when you finish the repair. Alright, so I got those cabinets all stripped out, pulled off the inside paneling here. This is the main beam that got destroyed. This one's in pretty good shape. The one right behind here is in pretty good shape. And this one is rotted out in the bottom. I do have to extend. This is where the cabinet basically came to, but I need to access this beam. So I'm scribing this so I can cut the paneling back a little bit. So I've got a 2x4 down here that's going down pretty much as far down as I can go. Then I've got these upper supports. Now I'm kind of measuring everything up. I got to take everything out and mount these 3 boards to this 2x4, and then we're going to set it all in at one time. I used wood glue on everything for extra strength. So my screw is only 3.5 inches long, so I'm using a countersink bit to take that down about 1 inch, so I get about 1 inch of grab into this piece of wood. Now the drill bits I use are a countersink and a drill bit all in one, so it saves a lot of time versus having to switch out bits. So I'm setting the frame into position, and then I'm going to go underneath on the frame of the trailer and anchor 3 lag screws into that 2x4. So I glued the lag screws as well to help them hold and not back out. I anchored 3 lag screws in total into the 2x4. So I gave my frame a couple good yanks to make sure I was into the 2x4s with the lag screws. Now we're just going to anchor all of these boards together. So I put a bunch of liquid nail between the studs of my frame and the existing studs on the trailer to add strength. I pre-drilled all my holes to anchor the studs together. I then used pry bars and clamps, among other things, to help line the studs up before anchoring them together. Then I put a whole bunch of caulking between the studs and the outer paneling. So as soon as I put all that liquid nail on the inside of the paneling, I came out here and I found a place to run some spreader clamps and pushed on the siding here, so hopefully that liquid nail adheres to that outside paneling and helps hold it in. So once I put the spreader clamps in, I came back on the inside and just spread out the extra caulking that had squeezed out between the studs and the outer paneling to help it adhere better. So I drilled the holes for the wiring for the front light and hooked it back up. So a couple years back, we had a water leak in our master bathroom, and we had a gentleman come over and he used a mixture of 50% hydrogen peroxide and 50% vinegar to kill mold spores. So that's what I've got here, and I'm just spraying down the whole inside of this wall. So I had some of the styrofoam. I'm going to use it for the insulation. So I decided to put some liquid nail on it to help adhere the outside paneling to the inside paneling as well. So I used a piece of the old paneling as a template to cut out the new piece of paneling I was going to use. So I took some liquid nail and I put it on all the studs where that paneling was going to adhere to, just to help it stick, and then I went ahead and put some on that piece of styrofoam as well to help that outside paneling hold to the inside paneling. So there used to be a visual bow in the side paneling, and that is no longer visible. I also anchored this 2x2 into the floor and then into the 2x4 in the wall to add extra strength as well. Since I didn't show you guys much of the demolition process, I figured I'd show you the back of the front panel of this cabinet that I took out. And as you can see, it's just all big staples. Okay, so with a couple pry bars, screwdrivers, usually pry this stuff apart and not damage it too bad so you can reuse most of it. So I liquid nailed this piece. Now I'm going to put it, I've got my stud right here, but I need to hold this panel too. So we're going to put that on there and then screw it in a couple times. I anchored those into the existing stud, and then I tack nailed the front cabinet back into place. So I was able to anchor this piece of the cabinetry right back where it was. I reused as much as the old wood as I could, just because it was less cuts I had to make and less stuff that I had to fabricate. So since I extended the cabinet, I had to make a piece to go along the floor, and then I had the upright to attach the front of the cabinet to. I anchored it together, then pre-drilled the holes for the floor so I could just run the screws in, anchored it in place. So I'm pre-drilling the upright so I can anchor it to the front panel. Truth be told, I should have done this when it was out. So since this piece was busted, I'm putting another piece right here. I anchored it here, I'm anchoring it here. Since I'm extending this cabinet, I had to modify the side panel, and I cut it right here. And then I'm going to put a full piece from the top to the bottom. So I had to add some little pieces of wood so I have something to attach that panel to. I finished brad nailing those in, and then I went ahead and put the side panel back on. So I got this paneling that I cut off of the end of the bed because we modified the way we put the bed back together. I'm going to show you that a little bit later. But it worked out really well, and it was able to tuck in to the original trim. So these slides are really simple. You slide them into the back bracket here, like so. Anchor in the front end. So I put the thermostat back in place that was on the cabinet. The two wires, hooked them up, and ran the wiring back the way it was. I cut the rest of the paneling for the inside of the cabinet and anchored some shelf supports. And then this was the existing shelf that was up above. So I'm going to go ahead and use that and then just build another little piece to fit in here. Since the cabinet was deeper from us extending it, we decided to put a clothes rod hanger up instead of the dual shelf that it had. So I grabbed a shirt on a hanger and I marked my hole so I could anchor my clothes rod. So I took some of the paneling that was in good shape from this side over here and covered up some of the worst part of the water damage just to make it look a little better. I actually thought these were stapled in, but they were actually screwed, and I pried them up out. We're going to pull one of the side panels off here so I can get to the screws and anchor it back into the floor. So the method I'm using here is the same method I used to pull all the cabinetry out of my way to do the initial repair. So I anchored the bed rails back in, and I'm just putting this back together the way it was. I did have to make a few new pieces. This one was busted out from taking it apart, but everything stayed in pretty good shape. And now we're just putting the inside paneling back on. So I'm marking where the cross members are so I can make sure I tack nail into those as well as the top and the bottom. So when we put the bed together, guys, I left this end piece open, and we've just got some plastic totes so we can pull them easily in and out. Most of these you have to lift the top of the bed up, and we always found that just way too much of a hassle. I did the same setup on my last trailer as well, and it just worked out well for us. Now I did put a cross member in across the top to help support, but this thing's plenty stout enough, and that's just way more convenient than having that all enclosed. So I was able to reuse all of my trim, and then I did add a couple more pieces for the extension on the cabinet. So I decided to pull all this old caulking off of the previous repair and reseal it myself. So I'm going to lay some caulking underneath this trim before putting it down, and I'm going to use some longer screws than what was in it to hopefully get a little bit of a bite into the wood. Make sure you choose a good quality caulk that stays UV resistant and flexible. So this is the finished product, guys, and we did take this on a camping trip about 120 miles up to Flagstaff and back, and then also about 4 miles on a really rocky terrain dirt road. So the repair looks like it's holding up good. I'll let you know if anything changes, and here's a final look at the internal cabinetry. Hope you guys enjoyed this video and hope to see you next time. Have a good one. Later.